Welcome to a Parthian Films Blabbercast. Parthian Films, in cooperation with the Snake River Theatrical Plagiarists Guild, is pleased to present the story of the 1927 Plum It Series. This tale is a part of the yet-to-be-released third installment of your Snake River Skirr travel guidebook. And that was it. It was game on. Baron Hawkingsworth saw a chance to make a profit and jammed his way into the deal. He convinced Petrov that this would be the marketing opportunity of a lifetime, and thus began the official games henceforth were known as the 27 Plum It Series. A fear of clowns. Once the Plum It Series hockey challenge was announced, a gigantic wave of rumors began to circulate the village. Even though most Snake Riverians knew very little of the minced clowns, most everyone was afraid. It was an odd situation. Even though we have a number of circus performers in our village, we have very few traditional clowns. With ignorance, these rumors were so wild that they do not bear repeating here. This story of our neighbors only cemented the idea that they were our enemy. It really was us against them. Snake River values versus the evil empire of New Minsk. Inside the Snake River hockey operations, this fear of the clowns was headed up by our general manager, Bill Mackenzie. It was an odd stance for the old man. For someone that was so full of love for his fellow man, it was odd how much he hated those clowns. The backstory behind that fact is a long one, best told on another day. A predictable sponsor, and the negotiations were slow and calculated. Had the Snake River side been represented by just about anyone else, the two teams would have just found some ice and played the game. But once Baron Pal Hawkingsworth appointed himself the lead negotiator, the challenge took on a turn to the absurd. Making arrangements to play a game, Mr. 10% fussed over every clause and consideration. The longer he dragged out negotiations, the more he got paid. Little did anyone consider at the time, but the longer the negotiations went on, the more the minced clowns trained and prepared for the series. The Snake River side just drank. Hawkingsworth directed that in order to put on such a proper challenge, the first element required was a sponsor. Hawkingsworth needed a source of revenue to fund his salary. Petrov was the willing sucker, and he and his company were the primary sponsors. He got the right to bear the namesake of the tournament. Hence, the greatest series ever played is known as the 27 Plum It Series. Although Hawkingsworth dragged out preparations to his own benefit, the minced clowns proved to be tough negotiators as well. For years, the performers from Minsk had to settle contracts with many a shifty circus promoter. They knew a raw deal when they were getting one. It seemed the only aspect of the deal that both sides would agree upon was the fact that each player would receive a generous supply of pickled plums. Finally, both sides agreed to all matters of import and trivial. The games were scheduled to be played in the fall of 1927. The dates set would allow the Snake River players to take part in the regular season of the King George Hockey League. The first 4 games would take place at the Snake River Coal House, and then they would move the series to New Minsk for the remaining 4 games. The real debate was over who would represent Snake River. The original challenge put forward by Bartleson was articulated as a Snake River child could probably skate a circle around your best man. The Minsk side kept reminding the Snake Riverians of that original statement. In the end, both sides agreed members of our professional touring team, the Skirr, would not be eligible. The Snake Riverian team would be chosen from our Moonshine Leagues. If you read Volume 2 of this series, you would know about this recreational league. In other parts of the Dominion, these associations are known as beer leagues. After all that negotiation, the Snake Riverian side would be represented by Mabel Dion, Yvonne Cornroller, Peter Hobvobovich, John Rattlehead, Philip Bespito and his brother Baloney, Robbie Snark, Goldtooth McGrim, and Raoul Gibson Fenderson. The backup goalie was Ken Dryman. The GM was the great hockey mind Pierre Elliott. The bench coach was the future Hall of Famer Angus McGruff. The assistant coach, Boo Ridley. Mainly due to copyright issues, the boys from Snake River played under the banner of the Dominion team. The clowns from Minsk were made up of the Schmelz family: Efren, Ivan, Yuri, Vladimir, Boris, and Yevgeny. Behind the bench was the master horse trainer, Bobrov Ravosky. Let the games begin. The Cole House was packed for that first game. Playing at home, Team Dominion stepped onto the ice first. The crowd greeted the team with a massive roar, thick with hometown pride. Then the clowns stepped on the ice. At first there was a round of polite applause. The clowns were a ragtag bunch. Their uniforms were a mix of cast-off Skirr uniforms and clown costumes. Their hockey sticks were, in a word, comically long, roughly 3 times as long as a normal hockey stick. Instead of the usual blade, the stick end resembled a croquet mallet more than a hockey stick. Snake Riverians had never heard of polo, let alone seen a game, so the new Minsk hardware was perceived as some sort of joke. Within minutes, muffled giggles grew into howls of laughter. The crowd could not contain their amusement. The hoots, howls, and guffaws continued throughout the opening ceremony as gifts were being exchanged. The Cold Dome PA announcer, Gorilla Monsoon, tried his best to get the proceedings back on track. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fellow Snake Riverians, please calm yourself. Gentlemen, please. The howling diminished somewhat. Ladies and gentlemen, in the name of King George, and in respect of our Dominion, I plead with you, please show our neighbors some respect. Mentioning the honor of king and country had the intended effect. Ladies in the crowd began to shoosh their fellow Snake Riverians. Slowly, the crowd got under control. Monsoon continued. Thank you. Now would both teams line up at their own blue line? Ladies and gentlemen, please take off your hats and rise for the playing of National Anthem. Please bring your attention to the bandstand as we welcome Dewey Riel and his orchestra, the Riel Time Players, and their rendition of the new Minsk National Anthem. After the fact, the slight was shrugged off as an oversight. It was an oversight that the team from New Minsk never forgot. It seems that no one had given Dewey any direction about the national anthem for the visiting team. Dewey never really kept up with the news. All he knew was the fact that the visiting team was comprised entirely of clowns. The band played the only circus music they knew, Enter the Gladiators. This circus theme song only threw more gas onto the fire. While the music played, the team from New Minsk wobbled and tried to maintain their balance on the ice. The clowns were not used to the super slick professional ice surface in the coal house. They had only ever skated on an outdoor rink that was full of ruts. The rough outdoor ice was easier to find a groove and maintain a steady grip, hence the wobbly nature of their stance. That night, no one in the crowd was aware of the fact that these clowns might be just finding their feet. As the New Minsk team teetered and wobbled the tune of Enter the Gladiators, the crowd could not contain its amusement. The roars of laughter returned in full force. Only more pleading from Monsoon and the playing of the Maple Leaf Forever put an end to the laughter. To a Snake Riverian, the end of the national anthem meant the start of a game. The Pavlov's dogs that they were, the packed crowd inside the coal house started to howl for the drop of the puck. Monsoon interrupted. Now, before we start, we request your attention to the front row of honor. We have a special guest that wants to say a word. The truth was, he did not want to say anything. Sadly, the crowd was in no mood for the prattle from another highbrow dignitary. They wanted to see some hockey, and they let Monsoon know their collective opinion. Please, ladies and gentlemen, in honor of the king, please, the PA announcer pleaded. The mention of the king did pull down the volume somewhat, but the fans wanted hockey. We must honor the man that made this day come to life. Ladies and gentlemen, Purvis Spikes. Purvis? Monsoon pointed to the first row, and in amongst all the dignitaries in suits sat Purvis Spikes and the Baw. If it weren't for the Baw, Purvis never would have been there. Baw's first game. The Trade Commission had invited Spikes to attend the games, wanting to honor his contribution. At first he declined, but then there was the boy. Over the years, the waif became a hockey fan. After his chores were done, there wasn't an activity the boy enjoyed more than listening to a Skirr game on the radio. He would sit close to the old macaroni device and cheer on his hometown team. GB the dog would nuzzle up close, and the boy had a companion. Baw was a most enthusiastic listener, and he'd often talk back to the radio. They should put Maloney on a line with Carpenter. What are they thinking? The radio would not respond, but the dog did, or you participate as much as a dog could. Purvis noted the boy's enthusiasm. He also acknowledged another truth. This electronic babysitter allowed Spike some time to himself. Some nights when the boy and the dog were busy with the game, Purvis would go and talk to Sally. That old mule was a good listener, and she was never judgmental. One night, with no game on the radio, the two were sitting around in their customary seats around the fire. Hey, Ma. Yes, Pa? What would you say if I told you I was given some tickets for the Plum It Series? 2 seats practically front row dead center. The waif went pale. If you pressed me on the matter, I would say you were most lucky. I heard tell that series has been sold out for weeks. I bet Mr. Crow would be the most happy to join you. The waif never lifted his head. Well, then, further, what would you say if I was planning to take you? Bloodflow returned to the waif.
You know, I've never been to the Coal House.
I know.
All 4 games?
Well, in fact, all 8 games. Some of them suits in town want us to go to the games in New Minsk as well.
Really, sir?
Really. So what do you say? Because I could give the tickets to O'Malley. The child recognized he was being teased. He launched himself at the bootlegger and hugged him hard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I swear I'll get all my chores done.
All the rest of the night, the waif was as chipper as a bird. He asked questions and made plans.
What should we wear? Could we sneak in GB? Should we bring our own snacks to save money?
In the end, there was no way out. Purvis Spikes was going to a hockey game. To make matters worse, they wanted him to say a few words. Spikes gets taken out of context. So there he was, inside the coal house with a microphone in front of him. The waif was standing by his side, and a sold-out crowd was all looking his way. Even before the crowd was paying attention, the bootlegger and his waif were beet red. Just that morning, they had baths in the village. They had been scrubbed hard with a horsehair brush and lye soap. The bootlegger and his apprentice had borrowed ill-fitting suits and ties for the event. The clothes complemented Spike's awkward stance. Purvis stepped towards the microphone. He reached out and grabbed the mic stand to steady himself. I ain't got but one thing to say. This message boomed out over the crowd. The volume shocked the bootlegger and nearly knocked him off his feet. He knew he had to keep going, and he grabbed at the actual mic, and that caused feedback. We wish each and every one of you on both sides the best of luck. We don't care who wins. This day couldn't be more special for my son. The bootlegger winked at the boy. On his behalf, I say thank you. The waif was shocked. Purvis Spikes called him son in front of everyone. The lad was so touched he started to cry. There were tears of joy, but they raked his body with sobs. The bootlegger stood close and rubbed his back, and the crowd went nuts. Purvis Spike's speech lasted 17 seconds. As a production, it was poorly executed. Throughout the speech, the sound man tried to compensate for Spike's lack of experience with a microphone and an amplified sound. It seemed just as Spikes got close to the mic, the sound man would turn up the volume. Spikes would then back off and the sound man would turn the knob down. It was a bad dance with bad consequences. Those in attendance, and those who listened in on the radio, only heard Spike say this. I ain't got but one thing to say. Win for my son on his behalf. That's what the crowd heard. Those in the coal house also witnessed the sight of the young boy weeping. These tears were a statement to the crowd how important a hometown victory was for the boy. A number of ladies lost control. The dear-hearted souls fought their way through the crowd to hug and console the child. He was flooded with hankies and sweets. All the hopes and dreams found an image in the waif that night. With that mistaken message, the opening ceremonies were complete, and the timing could not have been more perfect. When the puck dropped, that moment went on record as the loudest night the coal house had ever heard.